The auction hall smelled of pine dust and damp wool, a rough, hewn building thrown together for town meetings and winter sales, and tonight it buzzed with a nervous energy that made Illy Ward keep his hat low. Illy was a lumberjack, broad, shouldered and quiet, the kind of man who spoke to trees more than people, who counted seasons by the scars on his hands and the weight of snow on the roof of his cabin. He had come to town to sell timber and leave, but word spread fast about the charity auction, funds for the burned schoolhouse, a basket raffle, a donated horse, and, whispered last of all, a mystery bride. It wasn't what it sounded like, the sheriff said, just a pledge to sponsor a woman seeking passage west, a practical arrangement common enough when the frontier was long on need and short on options. Illy didn't plan to bid. He stood in the back as items went cheap and dear, watching faces, listening to jokes that didn't sit right with him. Then she stepped forward. She wore a plain coat, hands folded, eyes steady, no smile, no tremble, just stillness. The auctioneer cleared his throat, stumbled over his words, and opened the bidding. $10, 5. Laughter, the room thinned out fast, interest evaporating as the novelty wore off. Illy felt something tug in his chest, not pity, not romance, but recognition. He knew what it was to be measured and found wanting. The bids dropped to silence. $2, Illy said, voice calm, surprising himself. Heads turned, the gavel fell, it was over. He paid without ceremony, and the sheriff explained the terms. Safe passage, a roof, honest work until she chose her path. Outside, the cold bit. Illy offered his coat. She declined with a nod and walked beside him to the hitching post. They didn't talk until they reached his wagon, the horses steaming softly. "Thank you," she said then, not breathless, not grateful, simply factual. "I'm Illy." She looked at him in a way that felt like being seen through winter air. "I know," she replied, and when he asked her name, she paused just long enough to make the night lean closer. "My name is Mara Calder," she said, and something in Illy's life shifted, like a tree cracking before it falls. Calder was a name whispered in camps and taverns, a family tied to maps that vanished and mills that burned, to fortunes lost and found. Illy didn't ask. He handed her the reins and climbed up, choosing the long road home. If you're drawn to stories where one small choice changes everything, subscribe to the channel, because what Mara's name meant was only beginning to unfold. The cabin stood where the pines thinned and the river bent, sturdy and spare, and Mara took it in without comment, setting her bag down as if she'd been there before. Days passed, then weeks, and the arrangement settled into a rhythm neither of them named. Mara worked cooking, mending, keeping accounts with a neat hand, and Illy cut timber from dawn to dusk, returning to meals that tasted like care. They spoke at night by lamplight, trading facts like tools, where she'd learned figures, why she traveled alone, how a name could be both shelter and storm. The truth came out slowly. The Calder mills had once anchored 3 towns until greed and fire took them. Lawsuits followed, then threats. Mara had learned early how to disappear, how to carry ledgers in her head, how to read men who smiled too easily. Illy listened, understanding the language of risk. When strangers began to pass on the road asking questions, measuring the land, Illy changed his routes, and Mara changed her hair, practical as weather. Then one morning, a letter arrived with a seal that made Mara's fingers still. The Calder claim had resurfaced, tied to a tract upriver and a mill site marked wrong on old maps. Mara could prove it, she said, if she dared. Illy didn't hesitate. They packed light and went together, following the river through snowmelt and memory. What they found wasn't gold or grandeur, but rights, water rights, timber right, enough to rebuild honest work. Word spread, careful and slow. Men came offering buyouts. Mara declined. She hired local hands instead. The mill rose from sound wood, not ash. Illy stayed in the trees but learned the books at night. And when the mill's first wheel turned, the town turned with it. People who'd laughed at the auction came to shake hands. Mara never reminded them. She kept her name, but she kept her promises too. One evening, as the river ran high and the mill hummed steady, Mara thanked Illy not for the bid, but for the quiet way he'd stood beside her when standing cost something. Illy shrugged, embarrassed, and said the truth felt lighter shared. Life didn't become easy, it became meaningful. And if you believe that dignity, patience, and courage can rewrite a future, subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, where a $2 choice becomes a lifetime of change.